Well, hello guys. Welcome to Mastering React from Basics to Brilliance by CodeChef-VIT. We'll get started with the session in 5 more minutes. All right, I think we can get started now. Welcome to Mastering React from Basics to Brilliance by CodeChef-VIT. This is a series of Road to DevSoc sessions. We hope you've joined the last two and had a great time, and hope you'll have a great time here as well. Also, just a quick check, am I audible? All right. Good. I think we can get started then. So, the agenda for today is first of all, we'll go through these introduction. What is a web application? The components of a web app, and what React is. This session is mainly going to be about React. So, we'll have to explain what React is and why you choose React over something like vanilla JavaScript. The prerequisites for this session, as well as a hands on coding session. So let's continue. So, an introduction first. I'll just give a quick introduction to myself. I am Anand Rajaram, a senior core member here at CodeChef-VIT, and I'll be handling this session today on mastering React. We'll be covering these topics: React, Tailwind, fetching data from APIs, interfacing with external libraries, and lots more. So stay tuned because there's going to be a really fun and informative session. So, first of all, we need to go way back and kind of understand what a web application is. So, I'm pretty sure you guys have used stuff like Amazon, Flipkart, Instagram. All these are basically what a web application are. These are run on servers and accessed through browsers. You usually open YouTube or anything like that. You're watching the stream right now live on YouTube. That is a web application. So users can interact with these web apps through a user interface or UI. And examples are just what I told you right now. And now let's talk about the main components of a web app. A web app is usually comprised of three main things: the front end, the back end, as well as the database. Now, the front end is what you as users see on the website, it is the thing which you interact with. And that is the main part we'll be tackling in today's session. And backend handles the server side logic and the database management. So all your user data, what the backend actually does, all that will be handled in an upcoming session. So stay tuned for that. And the front end and backend communicate to provide a seamless user experience. Now let's continue. What is React? Now, React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. It allows you to create reusable UI components, and React follows a component based architecture. Now, all of this might have sounded like a whole lot of garbage if you guys aren't familiar with React. So, this session is mainly so that you guys can understand what this these many words mean. So, yeah. Now you may be thinking, why do I have to use React? Why can't I just use vanilla JavaScript and get my job done? Isn't that easier? Well, you're not completely right there. So React offers component reusability, reducing code duplication. Basically, it follows the main principle of dry, do not repeat yourself. And then React's virtual DOM enhances performance by minimizing direct manipulation of the actual DOM. So this is actually more performant than most plain JavaScript websites. Also, it is honestly much easier to use React over plain JavaScript because the syntax is so much easier, as you'll see. Now, the prerequisites for this session are mainly a basic knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Without these, you won't completely get a hand on what we'll be going through in today's session. And you should also be familiar with a few web development concepts. And finally, you'll also obviously need a text editor, something like VS Code, and Node.js and NPM installed. Luckily for us, these two aren't completely necessary, as you'll see. We have something really cool called StackBlitz, where you can just open it up in your browser and get a React app spun up very quick. So that's really cool. And now these resources are mainly what we'll be referring to throughout the session, either for documentation or just normal API reference in general. All these will be posted on the GitHub repository and in the description of the YouTube video, so you can check them out later. And now we can get to the hands-on session right now. I didn't want to keep the presentation too long since this is a hands-on session. We'll be coding the entire app together and this is going to be really fun. So to start coding, all you have to do is open up this URL in your browser, and that's it. So let's get started. So I hope you can see my browser right now. And yeah, all you have to do is go to your browser and type in the following URL: meet.mu/react. Now, once you've opened this up, you'll see all these things. You might be really confused about what is happening here, but don't worry. Give it a few seconds. This, for people who are using Brave, this might not work. So all you have to do is click on this thingy Go to advanced controls and make sure you click on allow all cookies and then reload the page and it'll work. But yeah, once you're done with that, you should have a basic React app. But what we're going to do here is first of all, stop the server and we're going to do some cool things now. First of all, I hope you guys are familiar with CSS because if you are, you will know how much of a pain it is to actually write CSS. So instead of having to write all the CSS manually, we are going to use something called Tailwind. Now, Tailwind is an absolute lifesaver because it makes your entire process of of writing CSS so much simpler. Let me show you how. So first thing, you need to create a Vite app, which we've already created here, so we're good to go. And we need to run these commands. So let's just copy this and paste this. Enter. And now once that is done, we can go ahead and copy the other command. Copy, paste. Uh, okay, apart from this, this is just the Tailwind CSS documentation. You can just see it over here, Tailwind CSS docs guides Vite. You just go to the main page, get started, framework guides Vite. And that's where we're copying all the commands from. Nothing too hard. Also, once we're done with that, we go on to step number 3, which is configure your template paths. All of this might sound like a lot of boilerplate, but trust me, it's just copying and pasting a bunch of things. Copy this, go to the Tailwind config, and paste. Save. Now, once you're done with that, uh, you just need to change these. Again, it's the same drill again. Copy, index CSS. You can remove all of these, it doesn't matter. Remove it and paste, save. You can ignore these red lines for now because these don't matter much, honestly. And yeah, that's basically all your setup done. Now we can just copy this boilerplate app over here, go to the app.jsx, remove everything, paste it in here, and now finally, for a moment of truth, we run npm run dev, enter. Voila, you run your first React app. Wasn't that amazing? It is pretty cool how all this is running just in your browser. You don't have to go through a lot of hassle in setting up npm, node.js, all of that on your local system. It just runs in your browser. You can open the website here, interact with the console. Everything works just as it should. So once we're done with this, let's get started with actually going about this session and building something cool. So before we continue, we need one more thing, which is this really cool thing called Diceware. This might give you a spoiler on what we are going to build, but yeah, Diceware is something really cool you'll be using to generate avatars. So for this, you just need to go to documentation, JS library, and install this. Let's just copy it. Go here, stop the server once again, and paste it again. Now that this is installed, we can go about actually actually making our app. This is pretty exciting, so stay tuned. So first off, what do we have to do? We need to import this. Use state, use effect from React. Now you might be wondering what these are. Don't worry, we'll get to it. Now, what we just installed Diceware for avatar, so we need something to create the avatar. Create avatar from Diceware code. And finally, we are going to be using the adventurer style over here you can see these look pretty damn cool. So this is the style we'll be going for. You can choose anything you want, it's up to you. Yeah, we'll be going with adventurer. So adventurer from add dice bear collection. That's it. Now to actually get started coding, let's first start off with our main app. So in React, we have these thing called components. Components are basically different parts of your app where you encapsulate different, let's say, different parts of what the website itself. So over here you make something called the app, and this should be familiar to you if you know JavaScript, the ES6 syntax. If you aren't familiar with this already, do take a refresher on JavaScript ES6 syntax. But yeah, they're just defining a function, and we can do the following things. Let's just return, and we'll put a div, and let's just put a h1 for now, saying hello. Save this, and we need to run our server most importantly. All right. So over here you can see the most important thing we forgot here. We made the app, but we forgot to actually export it. So you need to say export default because this is the main component app. Save it, and you should see hello CodeChef right there. It's very simple, and if you're with me so far, that's amazing. So now what we're going to do, I'll give you a quick idea of what we're going to build. So we'll have this page over here, and we basically will be fetching a lot of posts from this API. Over here you can see this fetch JSON placeholder.com posts. So what this is just a list of posts, and we'll be fetching these and showing these in a really nice manner, if that makes sense. So if you just run this in the console, like you can just open up the browser console anywhere and run this, it shows these are just a list of posts with a body, a title, user ID, and the ID for the post itself. Something you can understand. It's very simple. You're fetching posts and you're printing them. So all those posts you saw in the console over there are going to be displayed over here in a very pretty manner. So first things first is, how do we actually get the posts in React? So for that, it's basically this code, but we'll be making a few tweaks to it. So don't worry, it won't be too hard. First thing, we need to store all these posts in something called state. Now, what state is just something like a variable where you can hold data, and when this data is changed, this website you see over here is re-rendered. If does that make sense? Yeah. Uh, Basically, what re-render means is everything on the website for now is basically refreshed to get the newer version of it. So the way you define state over here is simple. Const. First thing you might want to do is switch off the autosave here because it'll keep giving errors. So just change this to save, and yeah. Right. Get to work again. Cool. Const. Now, what are we fetching? Posts. So we need the posts, and we need a way to actually fetch these posts. Let me just zoom in a bit so you guys can see it a bit more clearly. So we are getting the posts and a way to actually set these posts. Set posts is equal to use state and the initial value. The initial value over here is just an empty array. Now, this is the syntax. Yeah. I hope this is visible. right? So this is the syntax of the use state hook. Now, what use state is, you might hear this word thrown around a lot. Use state is a hook, a React hook. A React hook is basically a function which performs some or the other function on the React app. Use state is an example of a hook where you can store data and change the stored data. So over here, you have the state variable itself and the setter function. So once you've defined this, we still haven't gotten to the part where you fetch the posts themselves. So you need to make use of something called use effect, which is the second thing we've imported here. So use effect, handy autocomplete, and use effect takes a function as its parameter. Here we'll be using again arrow functions, so please do refresh yourself on arrow functions because these are something we'll be using everywhere in React. So yeah, we'll define an arrow function, and inside this, the main thing over here is we will keep an empty array. Now this empty array, uh, yeah, this empty array signifies, this empty array basically is an array of dependencies. So what use effect does is it runs the function given here when the page loads. And if there are any dependencies in this array, it also runs this function when any of the dependencies in this array change. So over here, we just want the function to fetch the list of posts when the page loads. So we just want it to run once on page load. So we give it an empty array over here. So over here, we can define another function to actually fetch the posts. Async function fetch posts. Now we're marking this async because this is an asynchronous function. Fetching data from an API is always asynchronous, so you need to make sure you actually get the data before you show it in the UI. That's why you mark it as async. And here const response is equal to await. And here we'll be using something called the fetch API. Fetch, and here we can copy the URL from here. HTTPS JSON placeholder.typecode.com posts. Go back here, paste this. That's it. Now, once you have this basically over here, we are mentioning await so that we wait for the data to get here before we actually show anything over here. So once we're done with this, you say const data is equal to await response.json. Now this response actually will have the data, but you need to get the data from it. This is how you do it. Await response.json. So whatever data this returns over here, if you can see, all this data over here is fetched using the response.json part. Once you've gotten this, you can just console log the data over here to make sure you receive the data. Yeah, save the file. Over here, you can't access the browser console directly, so you open it in new tab and just open the console. And we forgot one main thing. Over here, we defined the function, but we forgot to call it. So yeah, fetch posts. We are now calling the function. Let's reload the page. And you can see over here, the data is now console logged. I'll open this back up here. And yeah, now that we have the data over here, we need to figure out a way in which we can actually show this. So do you remember where we created this state variable called posts? Yeah, now's the time we actually use it. It's initially an empty array, but now what we're getting is an array of posts, right? So this array of posts, we need to set it. So we use the setter function over here, set posts. set posts data. Now, once we're done setting this data over here, we actually have all the posts in this state variable. So we can make use of it and show it in the website. So now we can finally get rid of this and show something that is actually useful. That is all the data we fetched. So first of all, if we try putting, so the way you show variables in React, define another state variable, something very simple. Count, set count is equal to use state, initialize it to 0. This is something just very basic to show you how variables work. So you created this variable over here, and now that you, if you want to show it, you basically enclose the variable name in curly braces. And you put in the variable name. Here we want to show count, so you just put in count, and you can see 0 over here. You can just change this to 1230, shows 1230. Simple. So yeah, that anything you want to show here, anything like any variable you want to show in your app, you just enclose it in curly braces. That's it. So we just comment this line out, and over here, if you want to show the posts instead, we can just do this, right? Oh, so let me just open this in a new tab again. What you'll get is an error because objects are not valid as a React child. That might have sounded like a lot of garbage, so don't worry. Let me try and demystify that for you. So, uh, all right. Someone's asking what is TypeScript. Cool. TypeScript is basically another form of JavaScript. So you can see over here that I've not defined any types as such over here. But if you've used languages like Java, you would have seen something like int count is equal to 0 or something like that. That int specifier makes what Java is called a typed language, a statically typed language. That is one of the things that JavaScript misses out on because it is not a statically typed language. It is a dynamically typed language. So what a dynamically typed language is, it whatever data is given, it infers the type of it. Over here, whatever data you're given, this, an empty array, the type of post is inferred to be any. You can see the any over there, right? So that is an inference. Over here, when you say 1230, the type of count is inferred to be a number. But with TypeScript, you actually explicitly define the type of each variable so that you get really nice editor integration. And when you actually deploy your app to production, it makes sure your code is safe. So those are the advantages of TypeScript. The reason we aren't covering TypeScript in today's session is because it is typically a bit more advanced than JavaScript. You'll need to learn a bit more syntactical sugar to actually make use of TypeScript's features. So great starting point is actually to learn JavaScript itself first. Yeah, I hope that cleared it out. So now getting back to where we were, if we show posts over here, it gives us this error saying objects are not valid as a React child. Basically, what we have here is all this array. JavaScript doesn't know a way in which it can show this array to us. So for this, we make use of another component. We need to create another component so that you can actually display this. So let's just comment out that line for now. And let's create something called a post. Const post. Again, this is following the same syntax as this. And over here, now this is a very important thing, so please pay attention. This will take something known as props. Now, props, you can imagine props to be like parameters you pass to a function. But in this case, props are passed to components. Remember, everything in React is a component instead of a function. So all your terminology should just get switched from function to component. But yeah, so over here you pass props and you just enclose them in curly braces and give the names. I'm just going to pass user ID, the user ID over here, body and title, because that's what we need for today. User ID, body and title. Now that we pass these props, we can actually use these in the function. So to actually display these, again, we go about the same thing. We return this kind of thing over here. Return again. And remember what I said about displaying variable names? Yeah, so that is basically, instead of putting posts like that over here, you can just display it in a nice way. So we have the user ID, body, and title, right? So we say, again, let's say just a normal p tag, and let's display the body. And let's just display everything else in another p tag for the title. I'll move this up one line. Yeah. Now you might see React crying about why there are two red lines over here. You can see the reason. JSX expressions must have one parent element. Here you can see we're returning two elements over here, which is not allowed. So what you can do is just delete it and create what is known as a React fragment. It's nothing simple. It's just like HTML but without the name of the element itself. Just open, right, close, paste. That's it. But closing bracket, and yeah, you've now made a post component, but you actually need to make use of this over here, otherwise what's the point? So what we'll do is we'll get rid of this, and now we'll just enclose everything in a div. And over here what we can do, again, you enclose in curly braces to either display variables, or the main part is uh okay, I can see one question. What is the difference of JSX and JS? I've seen many JSX files in these folders. So JSX just stands for JavaScript Extended. That is something, that is one of VIT's nice parts. You can check out JSX and the difference of between JSX and JS over here. But yeah, over here VIT usually uses JSX. Meanwhile, if you use something bad like create React app, then you'll see a lot of JS files. Hope that answers your question. So to actually display stuff over here, we say a div, and in these curly braces, basically any valid JavaScript expression can go in. So over here, what we're going to do is we have this list of posts, and now we want to map over these list of posts. Posts dot map. You can see the handy autocomplete showing up over here. Post dot map. Again, this is JavaScript syntax. Hopefully, you're familiar with it. Post.map, and it takes in, basically what map is it goes through each element in the array. Like over here, you can see that this is an array, right? It basically goes through each element in this array 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're just assigning those a variable name called post, and for each post, you want to return this. We created a post element right now, right? And what we said was it is a component where you pass props to it. So what we'll do is we'll actually make use of that component. We'll display it. So how you do that is just say post id is equal to, sorry, key is equal to. So when you're iterating over something, you need a unique identifier for each element in it. So you just pass in key is equal to post dot id. Yeah, you can see here we are getting an ID over here. We just pass post dot ID, and now we continue to pass the props: user ID, body, and title. User ID is equal to post dot user ID, which is this, and body is post dot body, and title is equal to post dot title. And now we actually need to close this tag, so slash this, and that's it. Once you save this, you'll see a very terrible looking rendition of our app. But if you notice closely, it is basically all the data we've been getting. So let's just refresh the page once, get rid of all these errors. Yeah, this over here, the first one, Kia et Sisipit, I can't pronounce that. But yeah, this is the body, this is the title, this is the title. Yeah, we are showing every post here in a pretty nice manner. But yeah, that's how you make use of components and actually pass props into them and show stuff, if that makes sense. Now let's get into the fun stuff. The fun stuff over here is actually styling the app using something called Tailwind. You remember all the stuff we had to do for this, copying, pasting a bunch of commands into a terminal and the index.css. Yeah, we're going to make use of it finally. So for styling this app, we really need to make this look pretty. So hopefully you guys are familiar with some CSS because we'll be using not too much. It's pretty easy to explain. Yeah, we'll get rid of all that for now and we'll start from the ground up. Let's just make a small div first which encloses everything. And over here we'll have another div which will enclose all the posts we get. So here, oh, we'll have another div which will enclose all the posts. And over here we can just say post dot map post, and we give the post key is equal to post dot id. That's for the autocomplete to work. Body post dot body user id, and what else do we have? Title. And now we need to finish it off. Yeah, this might it will look the same for now, but yeah, it's much easier to actually style. So this outer div, let's it's kind of looking bad right now because we all hate light mode, don't we? So let's just give it a darker background. One thing you might notice right off the bat is you can see class name over here instead of class. In JSX, you use class name because in essence you are writing JavaScript here and class is a reserved word. So you have to resort to writing class name over here all the time. So once you're done with this, class name, and you pass in your Tailwind classes. So for the background to be nice, let's just give BG gray and 700. This is basically Tailwind CSS syntax for showing a gray background. You can see it changed. Still looks disgusting, don't worry. We shall make it better. The contrast between the text and the background is really less, so let's make the text a bit lighter. Text gray 50. Well, that looks a bit better now. Now you can see everything over here is kind of like stuck to the edges over here. So let's give the inner container some padding. Let's give it a padding of 10. Looks much better already. It doesn't stick to the edges anymore. Yeah. Now that we're done with that, we actually can get to styling this post itself. Now for styling this post, each post should ideally have its own background and maybe a nice avatar or something like that along with the header as the title and the main content as the body. So what we can do is just get rid of all this and start from scratch as usual. We can get rid of this. We don't need a fragment anymore. We'll just enclose everything in a div once again. And now once we enclosed everything in a div, we'll have another div which will basically be like the header. So the header is another div where we'll have h1 tag, h1, which has the title. Now this title basically just shows the title of the post. And now we'll have another div where we'll have the body. We can show that in a paragraph tag, body. It's not going to look any different right now. Once we add some nice styles, trust me, it'll look much better. But yeah, we've done this, and now this outer div is basically what encloses the entire post. I think it should have a background of its own. So let's just give it BG white. You need to enclose that in class name BG white, and that looks pretty disgusting because you can't see anything. So you actually need to give it black text, text black, much better. Now, one thing you might notice is each post doesn't actually have any separation between each other. So between each post, we need to have a margin so that each post can be seen separately. So margin 5, M5, and you can see everything separates. Now you have a clear idea about which post is which. There's the title, there's the description, the body, title, body, title, body, and so on. Let me just clear this so it looks a bit better. Yeah. Now that each has their own title and body, we can go on and style these itself. So how we can do that? First, same problem as before. We can see that the text is actually sticking to the ends over here. So the way you fix that, simple, padding, much better already. And honestly, to me, I don't like the squared off size nature of these boxes. So let's make it rounded. Rounded MD for medium, and it automatically becomes rounded. By now, you might be seeing the niceties of Tailwind because it makes your life so much simpler with these utility classes, and you just add them to this class name wherever you need to make your life a lot simpler. So, yeah, once you have this, we can go ahead and actually style the header of the thing, the header of the post, and the actual body of the post. So, let's go for that. Now, for the header and body of the post, we can give the header. First of all, we need some separation between these two. So I think over here, what we can do is we can use something called flexbox. Now, it is possible to give a bit of separation between these two just with margin, but when you use flexbox, you, as the name says, it is pretty flexible. So let's just go ahead and make the entire thing a flex container. Flex, and let's mention the flex direction. Flex call for column. And now this won't make any difference right now. And now once you add this gap 5, now what gap 5 means is that every child of this flex container will have a gap of 5 between them. So these two are the children of this flex container, and these two will have a gap of 5 between them. Watch what happens when I save it. You can see there's a space over here. So this space, now you can finally properly see a difference between the title and the content. I think we can just like appreciate how far we've come from just displaying everything. Let's just go back a bit. This is it. Yeah, we came from here all the way, and there goes my code. Yeah, saving files does do a lot. Let's just take a quick refresher because I did something very stupid. Uh, you know what I'll do? Just copy from this page. Get rid of this. Rid of these. Rid of this. And this part we were done with. So yeah, there's all the same code as we've been using. And yeah, we're back to where we were. So over here, we just added these classes flex call, gap file to actually see a gap between the header and the actual content. So now for the actual header and content, we need to, so over here, you can see that you might want the title centered or something like that. But the main thing, what I promised we'd use is dice bear. So dice bear is actually something very cool. You can just go to documentation, go to playground. We're using the adventurer. You can change this to anything you want, and it generates avatars for you using whatever seed you give, which is pretty damn cool in my opinion. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll make use of Dicebear to generate some cool avatars. As I promised, we'll be interfacing with external libraries, Dicebear over here. So what we do is each post needs the avatar, right? So what will serve as the seed over here? You can see a seed, right? Enter the seed. What will serve as the seed over here is the user ID. So this user ID, we can just say, if you go to syntax over here, you go to documentation, JS library over here. Use the library with React. That's what we're using. How to use this? You can see an example over here. So we can just take examples from this. We'll be skipping the use memo part because that is out of scope for today's video, but it is something very useful and you guys should absolutely learn more about it. But yeah, for now, we'll keep it simple and we'll just use this const avatar is equal to, now you need to actually create an avatar. So create avatar, and the type, we want to use the adventurer type, right? Over here, you can see adventurer is what we want to use. So you can use adventurer, and now you pass in options for this. Now you give it an object with seed. Seed is what you saw over there. This is the seed. So you give it a seed, and you give the seed as a user ID, as we see here. And now you can pass some other options to it. I'll just give it a size of, let's say 256. Yeah, 256 sounds fine. And background color, because I don't want it to be a transparent background, so let it just be something like this. Uh, this over here might have had a few options. Let's see what was used over here. Nothing. All right. So what you do in these cases is you actually go through the API and see how you use it. So usage, let's just search background color or something. Not here. Cool. Uh, Iceberg, documentation, JS library, methods, create avatar. Now this create avatar method will take in some options. Avatar style, adventurer, documentation. And over here, you can see the options over here, right? So we can pass in background colors for these background color. Here, you just go to JS library. Let's just take this because this looks pretty nice. Copy this and paste it here. So now we actually have a background color for each. And now finally, this is just creating the avatar. We need it to be in a usable format. So what we do for that is we just say to data URI sync, open close bracket. Now we have a usable avatar. You see how it looks once we put it in an image tag. Image, let me just source instead of putting a string as the source, you can use this avatar. As I said before, enclosing anything in curly braces is a JavaScript expression. So you can put avatar over here, alt, you can just put it as avatar. And why is this? Okay, so you might just want to add this. Now you can see this cool guy. Each post will have a different avatar based on the user ID. This has another user ID, this has another user ID, these have another user ID, etc. So now this avatar is clearly too big, so we need to do something about it. So ideally, in something like, let's say, a Reddit, you'll see the avatar and the title of the post next to each other, right? So what you can do over here is just define this as a flex container as well. Flex, but instead of defining it as column, over here you say flex row because you want the elements side by side. Flex row, and you can see it goes side by side. It is exactly what we wanted. But the image is still too big, so let's just use some tailwind magic to fix that as well. Let's give it a width of 20 and a height of 20. And you know what? Usually avatars are rounded. So you can just use tailwind magic as well. Round it full. Look at how much better that looks. Now, one thing you might notice over here is that these aren't centered. They don't look too aligned. Again, thanks to Flexbox, you can fix this as well. You can just say item center, which centers everything along the cross axis of what is called the flex container. If you aren't familiar with Flexbox, do go and refresh yourself. It is one of the most useful things in CSS, if not ever. It is very useful in defining multi-column layouts and making your life a lot simpler when working with CSS. So once you say item center, you can see the image shifted a tad bit down, and you can see everything is aligned along the center. But there's still this ticking issue. So how did we fix ticking issues in the past? We fixed it with padding. But over here, since there is a flex container, we can just say gap 5 again, and it'll keep a gap between the two elements over here. Save this, and there's a nice gap. It's pretty cool. Now, finally, to end off, we need to make a title a bit bigger. So let's say text to Excel, and save. The text is bigger, and you can maybe make the font bold as well. Font bold, and the font is bold. Now, once our title is actually made proper, we can go over here and the body text as well. Now, the body you can leave it as is because, in my opinion, it looks pretty decent right now. And yeah, there you go. We've made something very cool. We are displaying a list of posts from this, which initially looked like just an array, and you're displaying it in what I'd say is a pretty neat manner. We use Tailwind. We actually fetch the data first using the fetch API, made sense of the data, stored it in state, then we displayed the data and we made it pretty using Tailwind. And finally, to add the finishing touch, we added these cool looking avatars using Diceware. Create avatar, and you use these avatars over here to make it look like different users are making these posts. And yeah, uh, that's it. If you want to extend this more, like let's say for example over here, when the screen is made small, you might want this, instead of these to be like this, you might want the avatar to just come above the title. So what you can do is make use of Tailwind CSS responsive design classes. So over here, this is the main header we are tackling. So flex row. But initially, so what Tailwind follows is something you call a mobile first design. So with mobile first designs, you actually go with what it should look like on a mobile device first. If I make this flex call, you can see it immediately flips places. And that looks perfect. That looks exactly like how it should. But When you switch to desktop view, it looks pretty terrible. So you can actually have it both ways. Flex call, and on big devices, like let's say medium viewport and greater, you make it flex row. Now it still stays like this, but over here it becomes nice and simple. So yeah, that's about it. We made, also, if you didn't notice, this is fully responsive as well. You can make it as small as you want and it completely works. It is nice and responsive across all viewports thanks to the magic of Tailwind. And the best part is you guys didn't have to set up anything on your local computer. Everything works in StackBlitz thanks to the magic of Vite and StackBlitz itself. And I think we can call it a wrap now. Thank you for watching. It was wonderful having this, and I'll be ready to take some questions now. Also, before we end, I'd like to just bring this up into your notice. So, we have another session coming up tomorrow. Over here, you can see this is some pretty horrendous design. So, what we aim to fix with that is with this session. We have another session coming up called Pix Elevate tomorrow, 9:30, 10:30, and it's hosted by our dear core member Vaibhav Patak, who is one of the main designers in CodeChef. He is going to do an amazing job explaining to you what and how you go about designing a website or anything in general, posters or stuff. And yeah, do stay tuned for that because that is going to be really informative. It will help you design much better looking websites than what I have right now. But yes, hope you guys had fun, and that's about it. See you guys in the next one. I see one question over here that is Tailwind CSS and React same? So what Tailwind CSS is it's a CSS library. Over here you can see a utility for CSS framework. While what React is it's a JavaScript library. It's a UI library. This is mainly used to actually, over here you can see we're fetching the posts over here, we're displaying it all over here. That is all because of React. Only the styling, only the CSS part, that's what Tailwind CSS is. That's about. What is React? Well, that's what we went through in this entire session. So feel free to rewind and watch the session again. And yeah, uh, any other questions? Yeah, you absolutely can make a website in HTML and Tailwind CSS, but to actually fetch, to actually make your website dynamic, you will need JavaScript. Like for example, over here, I'm fetching posts from this website, right? To actually do that with just plain HTML and CSS, you need JavaScript to actually fetch these posts. So yeah, you do need JavaScript, but React makes your entire JavaScript a lot simpler. What was to data URI sync purpose again? So this was mainly, okay, you see the avatar over here, right? This makes the avatar, but we need to convert it into a form where you can actually display it. If you just put this over here, this won't work because you'll get the same error as before saying an object cannot be a child of a React node. So what you do here is you use the to data URI sync. What this is, the sync at the end basically shows that it is synchronous and not asynchronous. But yeah, this is basically to make this avatar usable in your code. Does that make sense? Is there a way we can make many web pages Like if we click something on the main web page, it should go to a sub page. Good question. So the way you do that is you use something called React Router. Now the good thing about React is it has a really good ecosystem. You have many packages, some stuff like React Query, React Router, Nextauth, Next.js. So you can use all of what you learned today along with the entire family of whatever has been made by the community. And React Router is just one of them. React Router, over here you can see when you open a new tab, it's just one page. If you go slash anywhere else, it won't work. It just shows the same page again. That's not what is expected. So over here, if you use React Router, you can actually use much nicer routing and display different pages on different pages. I hope that answers your question. Why not Vue or jQuery? Well, I'm glad you know those. So Vue is also an alternative to React. You can use either React or Angular or Vue or whatever flavor of the one JavaScript framework there is. There are JavaScript frameworks coming out every single day. React just happens to be the most popular one, the most widely adopted one, and the most useful one. So yeah, you can just, it has great community support. Not going to say that Vue doesn't. Vue also does, but I think for a beginner, React is really good. Just stay away from Angular. No offense meant. Yeah. I think that's about it for questions. Like to wrap up today's session. And yeah, all right, one last question. Okay, so to make website reactive, we need to use React. The main way you make your website reactive is to use JavaScript. JavaScript is the main. Over here, you're using React because it makes your job of JavaScript much simpler. You're using React to make JavaScript a less of a pain. That's it. All right, we'll be wrapping up for today. Thank you guys. Had an amazing time. Great session. You guys were interactive too. Hope you guys had a good time. And yeah, think we can call it a day. Good job. We've learned a lot. See ya.